Yeah, okay, we are on air, but there is a slight lag, 30 seconds on one minute or something like it says live now. Okay, everybody who is here today, we have a webinar on a technical aspect of SEO with Alan Bleiweiss. Alan probably will tell a little bit about himself, but I know he started just before First World War. Internet didn't exist. Computers didn't exist, but Alan, we're already doing SEO. Okay. Yeah, yeah, I hope we're getting more viewers. We're getting more views. People tend to be late. So people who are joining us right now, okay, you can see Alan. Alan, do something like this. Okay, this is our speaker, Alan. And we have two members of public, which is not exactly correct, but I'm asking public if somebody wants to be right here, together with us. Just give me a shot over the chat, and I'll give me your email. I'll send you a link to get inside here, but you have to have, well, microphone, camera, so you can join us, you can ask questions and do everything. Oh, I can see we have more people. People are joining us. We have guys who just joined us. We haven't started yet. We're waiting to have more audience. And brave man, just let me know. I'll give you a link. Or brave woman, give me a. Guys who just joined us, we haven't started yet. We're waiting to have more audience. And brave man, okay. Just know, I know what is this. Woman, give me a. Guys who just joined us, we haven't started yet. Okay, so it looks like nobody gives me an email. So I just repeat, if somebody wants to join us inside this green room, what we call it now, like in TV, green room. So just send me email, or better just type your email. This in the chat down there, just down the screen. So I'll send you email, and I can provide you with a link so you can join us. Actually, okay. So I can see people still registering, but never mind. I'm pretty sure I can send them links. Okay. I guess, guys, we're about to start. No brave people who wants to join us straightforward. Well, never mind. So, Alan, can you tell us something, well, before you start presentation, something interesting?
Yes, I could tell you a lot of things that are interesting. They're interesting to me because it's my life. So I've been doing internet marketing for 21 years, and just mid-January it'll be 21 years. And a lot of people do webinars as a way to get mailing lists or to expect or hope for business. While I would enjoy getting additional business from this kind of opportunity, I don't primarily do webinars specifically to get more business. I do it because it's one of the ways I give back to the business community, right? I believe that if you do good things in the world and you do it for the right reasons, that things will work out. So that's the primary reason that I'm here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Here's an interesting fact. I have no home in the traditional sense. I live in an apartment, but I'm a nomad. I move.
Okay, you move in your apartment with you?
No. I move pretty frequently. You know, I've been here in Arizona since last February, and I'll be moving again at the end of January. I'll be moving to California, but I've lived in California 4 or 5 times already. I've lived in Washington State. I've lived in Maryland, New York, Alabama, Oklahoma. I've lived in Germany for a year and a half. So this is a beautiful thing about working for yourself and being dedicated to the work that you do, is that if you want, you can build a life that you really enjoy. So I don't know if that's interesting to anybody else, but
yeah, I think it's very interesting. I wish I could travel all around it. Okay, guys. I guess there is no brave people who wants to join us right now, so we will go. We go on as it is now. So I don't know, Emil, do you want to ask something? Umar? Not now. Okay, okay, guys. Just yeah, for sake of just switch, Umar, if you can switch off. Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I can hear.
Oh, you can hear. Okay, okay. If you can switch your mic off during the presentation, would be better, so system would not switch because of some other noises. Okay, Alan, it's all yours.
great. Okay, I'm just starting up my presentation right now, so bear with me while I turn this on. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, Alan.
Great. So I do my best to convey the concepts of advanced SEO as far as it relates to the notion of sustainable SEO, right? SEO, in many people's minds, is getting visibility in the search engines, but not enough people take the time to think about the concept of sustainability, being able to succeed, and in a way where even when Google makes major changes to their updates, or Bing makes major changes, or if there's a shift in the companies that provide search engine platforms, that visibility gets strong and stays strong through all of those challenges. So that's generally what this presentation is about, and I'm going to get into some specifics today. And today I want to cover a concept that I've come up with a few years ago, where I call the 5 super signals of SEO. I mean, there's many different signals or factors, right? The standard thinking is there's 200 factors. But even when you go further than that and you realize that one factor can make an impact on another factor, it's much more complex than just 200 factors, right? Some people have done some studies over the years where there's literally something around 10,000 micro factors, right? But for me, it all comes down to 5 particular considerations that apply to every other factor that's out there. So every signal, every factor gets filtered through those 5. So I'll cover that today. And then from there, I want to move into site speed, because site speed is really important. Site speed first became a consideration the year before Google rolled out the first Panda update. And it's actually part of the Panda algorithmic environment because it's related to quality. But even Matt Cutts, before he stepped away from being the head of Google's spam team, stated at an SMX Advanced conference that if your pages are consistently 20 seconds or slower, that's directly going to impact your SEO. And I also have other clients that I've worked with, direct clients, where not all the time, but from time to time, they've done nothing at all but improve their speed, and they've gained back rankings that they had previously lost. So I know for a fact from personal experience as well that speed is a really important consideration. And then you throw on top of that all of the case studies that are out there in our industry about speed and its value. And so that's why that's going to be a primary area I'm going to talk about today. I'll cover some things that a lot of people may already know, but I want to really dive in to a couple of the ways that I go about evaluating speed considerations during one of the audits that I do, and where I help identify ways to improve speed in that process. So I'll cover that. And then I'm going to talk about reinforcing topical focus signals, because those are two of the most common problems I find in the audit work that I do. And now 4 years in a row I've focused almost exclusively on audits, so 60 or 80 audits a year. Seeing these things over and over again, I think it's really important to share this knowledge. And while you may have already been exposed to a lot of it, or in pieces elsewhere you may have come to learn or hear about everything that I'm going to be talking about, hopefully I'll be presenting it in a way that you get a clearer understanding, or it reinforces some thinking that you might have already started with, and where you just needed that additional reinforcement from somebody who lives this every day. Okay, so what do you do for SEO, right? I hear this so often. It's like, oh, SEO is all about links. No, it's content. Content is king. Oh, no, yeah, you don't want to build links anymore. You want to do content marketing. Then there's voices who just can't figure it all out, so they complain Google is evil. Or they can figure it out most of the time, but they don't like Google's actions, and so they get caught up in Google being evil, when we can have our opinions about that, but it doesn't serve our needs in helping sites get better visibility or maintain that visibility. And then the last concept that I see way often is people say, well, so-and-so, and that's anybody in the industry that they can refer to, says that this factor or this thing you're saying doesn't matter. Well, the truth is, not any one of those issues is accurate by itself. It's quite possible that every one of those considerations can be applied to a certain degree, but if you're fixated on any one or two of those concepts, you're likely not going to be living in a sustainable success world. And so what does it come down to? Sometimes you just need to do more work. Sometimes you need to reinforce messages or signals that you're sending already through additional methods. And unfortunately, with the severity of the Google penalty world that we live in now, once in a while, you just need to start from scratch. So those are the three standard resolution paths. More often than not, it's one of the first two. It's rare that you need to completely start from scratch, and it's painful if you have to go that route. But those are typically the three paths that I see clients needing to take. All right. So what's the solution? I have these 5 super signals, and it can be referred to as quality, uniqueness, authority, relevance, and trust. QUART, Q-U-A-R-T. And these 5 super signals need to be applied to every single thing that you do in SEO. And then if you could couple that with consistency of effort over time, as well as consistency across different factors, so that you're sending the same message through multiple methods, you're going to get the wins that you need eventually if you can apply enough leverage. I need to say that for sure, though. Applying enough leverage is often the barrier that businesses and site owners and SEOs face because of limited resources, limited financials, and there's not enough ability to apply effort to overcome the challenges that Google's ecosystem presents, or Bing's ecosystem, if a lot of the market that you're trying to reach happens to be on Bing or Yahoo, right? They have their own challenges. So that's one factor that we can't control, is if budgets are limited, that may be a prevention point. But if we do our best with the 5 super signals in the work that's done, and if we apply consistency of effort over time and across multiple signal points to reinforce messages that we're sending, we have the best chance and the best opportunity to succeed. So let's say you have an individual factor, and let's talk about relevance, right? I mean, how relevant is an individual page for a particular search? How relevant is the information being presented, right? Relevance is obviously really important, but relevance is only high quality when it matches the goals of the site and the needs of the person that did that search at the search engine, right? It's got to be useful. Dwayne Forrester, formerly from Bing, and now running the SEO operation over at Bruce Clay Inc. for Bruce, just has recently talked about the notion of usefulness as the most important consideration. So you can have something that's really relevant to the topic overall, but if it's not relevant in a way that's going to get the person who came to the site an answer they're looking for, or the ability to take an action they need, that's not useful to them in that particular moment, in that need, right? So you need to think clearly on a deeper level about how each of these super signals relates to what's being done. And you can get away with certain weakness. So I generally find that if you get 3 of these 5 to be aligned for any one thing you're doing, whether it's the page titles you're creating, or the URL structure, or the content organization, or the user experience, if you get any 3 of these really strong, you don't necessarily need to have the other 2. You can typically overcome that, right? So a great example is if it's a new website, you don't have any authority yet. But if you have a quality piece of content, it's a quality user experience, it's highly relevant to the people that are visiting the site. If you're a trustworthy business, you know, if it's unique enough, you don't need to have that authority initially, right? If people don't know your brand, they're not going to have trust yet, so you need to establish that. But if you have a quality site, uniqueness, and relevance, and those are high enough by themselves, people will begin to trust you almost right away. All right, there are several primary factor groups that I've identified, and the first 3 are information architecture, so that's organizing the site, right? Where do I find these products? Are they in a category? Where is this category found within the website? Are the products in this web category appropriate for this category, or do they belong in another category? What is the URL structure? Because that is directly how people get to your content, even if they're clicking navigational links, and navigation is part of information architecture. The search engines are a user. They're an algorithmic user that's attempting to emulate human users, so the URL structure is more important for their need in understanding the structure and the organization. But those are factors. Topical discovery, finding the content. How does the search engines find your content? Not just, oh, well, they can crawl the web, or there's a sitemap as one thing, or there's navigation on the site as one thing. There's multiple paths for discovery. User experience is at the top of the list, obviously, because if users have a bad experience, then the quality is not going to be there. There's not going to be any trust. You're going to lose or not even gain authority. It doesn't matter how relevant your content is, right? Topical focus, I touched on that briefly with the notion of your products as an example in a shopping environment. If I have a category and I have products that are not related to that category, but I find them inside that category, that confuses the topical focus of that category. Right? There's many other ways, and I'm going to get into some of the other ways that topical focus can be reinforced and diluted. Crawl allocation. If you have 10 million pages on your site, but only 4 million of them ultimately turn out to be quality, unique, relevant, trustworthy pages, well, that's 6 million pages that really don't deserve to be indexed in the search engines. But if you keep them open to the search engines, that dilutes the crawl allocation, and it puts a drain on the ability for Google or Bing to be able to get directly to the information you want to have indexed and that deserves it. And that can be harmful if you have a lot of URLs and there's a lot of duplication, for example. That's a waste of their resources. So sometimes search engine crawlers will abandon sites if there's a drain because they just see, well, this is all the same content, not enough uniqueness, we're out of here. That's the problem. Google slap, obviously. If you've been penalized or have a manual action or multiple penalties or multiple manual actions, that's a factor that needs to be weighed and evaluated and dealt with in the overall understanding of SEO. Brand reinforcement, because it's all about the user experience. Brand reinforcement needs to be understood as a primary need, and this goes to the notion that some people complain that big brands have a competitive advantage. Google gives brands favoritism in results. They don't do that just because they're big brands. They do it because big brands are already known and expected to provide specific solutions, needs, answers, and they have a certain amount of trust and authority already built in, and people expect that they're going to get relevant results or needs met from those well-known brands because of the work that brands have done to build their authority and their trust for the market that they're trying to reach, right? So every website needs to understand that it is its own brand presence, even if you're a small startup or a small company or an individual with your own website. There is a brand identity that needs to be acknowledged, and if you focus on brand building and brand visibility and brand trust, you can achieve similar results to the big brands. Multi-channel interaction needs to be understood. It's not just SEO. Like in Google Analytics, you can see multi-touch data. Oh, X number of people who came to the site through search engines also came to the site after seeing you on social media, or an email campaign, or direct marketing, or other methods. And sometimes they come to the site through SEO, and then they go to your social media platform to see if there's authority or trust before they make a decision and come back. So multi-channel interaction is important. And then in an ongoing basis, you need to be able to monitor the site. You need to be able to monitor the data, the health of the site for your decision-making processes. Page speed factor complexity. Here's a multi-factor consideration for the broad topic of page speed. It's about quality, and if there's weakness in the quality of the user experience, it's going to harm the authority and your trust signals. So this is a great example of where one, quote, factor impacts 3 of the super signals, right? All right, so let's talk about ways to identify problems with speed. There's a lot of analytics programs out there, and site owners and managers have different preferences. I have consistently found that Google Analytics is the best data source because it's Google's real data, And if it's data that Google is using and they're presenting it to you, you can be sure that it's important information because it's data that Google has. It doesn't mean that every single data point they provide to you in Google Analytics is directly relatable to SEO. However, there's enough that's directly relatable to SEO that matters that I encourage sites to get Google Analytics. You can go and you can get user experience information. You can search for, you can look for the average speed of the site across the site. The default setting is 30 days, but you can expand or contract that time range to see how much time it takes for people to actually get one page on your site on their browser to be able to start reading, right? And you may see the first few pages listed, which are the default is the most visited pages, are pretty fast. But don't assume that just because the first 3 pages or the most visited pages are fast that your whole site is fast. You need to look at more pages and you can sort it by the speed page load column, and you can see slower pages, and you can look at individual pages and you can see where there's potential problems. But you can even break that down further and see if there's particular geographic locations where the speed is worse than in other cities or locations, and that can help you make decisions about whether you might need to have a second version of your site stored somewhere else listed, which are or where you might move your hosting servers. So those are considerations. You can look at individual pages to see where, oh, well, the average page for this, the average speed for this page is 5 seconds. This is great. But if you click on that individual page link in Google Analytics, you might find that on some days of the week or on certain days over the historic time frame that you're looking at, there was really serious problems with that one page on those individual days. And when that happens, that throws off the entire average over a 30-day or 60-day period. And you need to look at that because, well, maybe it was only 5 people who on that one day, it took 100 seconds for that page to load. And if you had 5,000 people, but only 100 people were impacted, you may not care or you may not think it's important enough. But take the time to think about that. If you look at page after page after page, and 10 people were affected this day on this page, and 500 were affected that day on that page, the total number of people that are harmed can really add up. And do you want to consider how much money was lost because of that cumulative problem, or do you want to bypass it? You get to decide, but dig in to find this information. One of the tools I use for my audits is urivalet.com, and you can get a list of the files that are unique objects and the total file sizes, and this can help you to understand where you might have too many files or where the cumulative weight of those files is a problem. When you get your Google data, one thing that I like to do is I always like to verify. Well, is what Google's seeing, is it something that I can test, right? If I go to Google and I see the majority of people in the one test that I looked at in Google who had a slow experience were from a country or city I don't care about, did I look at enough historic data in Google to make sure that's not the case for people in locations I do care about? So I can use other tests, urivalet.com, for example, and webpagetest.org for different locations to get real live examples of what's going on to help me get better understanding, well, I really do have a problem I need to address. One of the best tools I have in webpagetest.org's environment is the details report. When you put a URL into webpagetest, you can say test it from this server location around the world. You can say do it with this connection type, DSL or cable or mobile. and you can choose Chrome or Internet Explorer. You can test all those different ways. And then you get an initial report back, and it gives you a grading system, and it gives you the overall speed. But you can click on the details link, and it breaks down every single process on that page, and it shows how long it took for each part of the process hop through DNS lookup, initial connection, SSL negotiation, time just for the first byte to come back, the total amount of time for the download for that one particular file, whether it's the HTML, if it's a font file, if it's an image, style sheets, JavaScript, MP3s, video files, whatever they are. And now you can start to see where the specific bottlenecks are happening. This is invaluable. When you do this with enough pages, you can see patterns that say, oh, wow. We're using 5 font files from third-party servers, and those fonts are taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds to process. Well, if it takes 5 or 6 seconds just for the fonts to work, people can't even read the content until that happens. But if you add image delays and scripts that need to be run because they're too big or because there's a server problem, all of a sudden it's 20 or 30 seconds for the user to be able to even make use of the page. The details report in web page test is invaluable for understanding those issues. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water here. So what I have listed here, the page speed evaluation bottleneck point spreadsheet that I have here, this is the most common areas where I have found through my audit work where speed problems come from. So if you have a CDN or a content delivery network, just because you have your site or your files on a CDN does not mean you can ignore speed considerations from the CDN. CDN environments can be set up incorrectly, or you could be on a low-end CDN that's overloaded with other sites and other content, or there's a disconnect somewhere between your site's web server and the content delivery server somewhere else on the internet. Each of these areas, the server types and locations or considerations, the file types are all things that I see repeatedly as being speed problems, and then the different processes that need to happen, all are considerations. And you might find something else entirely beyond what I find, or that's not listed here, but these are just by a general rule the standard areas where there are speed issues and their origin points. Just to let you know, after this webinar, at the end of this presentation, I have a link to this slide deck for you to be able to view it online afterwards. So don't worry about missing anything right now. You'll be able to get access to it afterwards. All right. So just one of the many different areas to be aware of in page speed considerations is the server that's involved. Whether that's your server or the server where you have files stored, or there's a script that you're pulling from some other company, and you can begin to test those. Most of these you can only test for your own servers because you don't have access to the Google Search Console data for a content delivery network or a widget provider, right? But you can use these tools to be able to look for signals that you have server problems. So with Google Search Console, the time to download pages is a consideration point, and it tells you whether there's a problem on your server. If it takes Google too long just to download the code without even processing the code itself, that's a server-related problem. Google PageSpeed Insights, if there are intermittent problems or consistent problems with server response time, you will see server response time listed as one of the issues that needs to be addressed. Note, though, that if they're intermittent, when you run a live Google PageSpeed Insights test, that moment you may not get the server response time warning. So that's an intermittent issue, so you can't just rely on Google Page Speed Insights. This is why you need other tools. Web Page Test gives you first byte time. How long does it take just for that first byte of data to come back? Webpagetest.org also lists the content download time. Now these are both data points in that details report at Web Page Test, right? If it takes a few milliseconds for the SSL negotiation and a few milliseconds for the first byte, but it takes you 4 seconds for that one file to be fully downloaded, that means the server isn't able to deliver that piece of content in its entirety fast enough. Screaming Frog gives you a column for response times. Deep Crawl has a response time column, but it's called maximum load time. All of these, in aggregate, can paint a picture about whether there are server problems. And if you just rely on any one of them, you're probably or possibly missing other signals that can tell you what's really going on. All right, let's move on to topical focus. Topical focus is about what is this site about? What is the keyword focus? The highest level keywords, the most important keywords. In our industry, we call them the money keywords, right? What is that about on that site? Well, Google Search Console offers a report that shows the top keywords, and it's the individual words that Google's ecosystem has identified as that site being most likely to be about. It's not 100% accurate, it's not perfect for all sorts of reasons, but generally speaking, Google listing these words and not listing other words, even if those other words occur more frequently on the site, is because Google thinks this word is what this site is about. And this screen that I have now is a great example. I just did an audit where 2 of the top 5 keywords were image and description. And it's because all of the images had alternate attribute text that literally was image description. It was the default words, right? Google misinterpreted that in evaluating their understanding of the site, and that's a problem, right? Because that means that other words that are more important in the true intent of the site are weakened to a certain degree. Also in this screen I show hover and row. Those came from the code. JavaScript embedded on the pages at the code level at the source. Bad code, improperly executed, can confuse Google's understanding of the topical focus of the site. Topical focus on-site and off-site comes from several different factors that are all matched up to send a consistent message, or where one factor confuses or invalidates a previous understanding that one aspect of Google's system identified originally. Right, so page title, URL, breadcrumb, all of these different signals are individual factors, but they all add up and can reinforce each other. So some people say H1 tags don't matter. Some people say breadcrumbs don't matter. Well, you know what? If you do enough right things in other ways, they don't necessarily matter. However, how much time does it take to get these right? It's a one-time thing. So if you get them right one time, you're reinforcing the signal that this page is about this topic. But if you have a page title that's about one topic, and your URL is not human-friendly, right? It's not a permalink, or the URL is confused, or your H1 is something completely different because you're trying to rank for all the things, you're going to dilute the topical focus. So if you're going to make use of them, get it right and be consistent. Don't be abusive, and you need to understand intuitively and intellectually what too much effort is, and that's over-optimization. But you can be consistent across all of these signal points on site, And while you need diversity with inbound link anchor text, it's not a problem if you use consistent anchors on your own website for the most important phrases for the particular page you're linking to, again, without being abusive in how many words you use or where it's not accurate because you're trying to manipulate the message, right? So consistency without abuse is really helpful. And it's much more complex, right? So I talk in this screen, you know, the concept of proximity, right? If I have a category and then I click into the category and I have 5 services listed, if those 5 services are all highly related, the fact that they're all highly related helps you strengthen each of the individual services pages because they're highly related, and Google is able to understand that. But if you have a primary service and then you have a second service that's completely unrelated, that can confuse the message that this section of the site or this site is really about this particular topic. So you need to be careful in not getting too diverse. Sometimes you might need a second website or a subdomain, or at the very least a second folder or funnel on the site, right, to separate those out so you prevent the topical dilution within an individual section of the site. Informational versus transactional is also a consideration, right? You can have informational and transactional content. You want to sell products, but you want to teach people. It's perfectly valid to have both of those on the site. You just need to be aware of how those can negatively impact each other if you don't do it cleanly or present it in a really high level of user experience quality. Topical focus, right? So another factor for topical focus is something that a lot of people miss. Oh, we don't need to have links in our navigation because we list it in our sitemap. Well, if you list the URL in your sitemap, but it's not in your site navigation, what message is that sending? It's telling the search engines, we don't need our site visitors who come for other reasons other than SEO to actually get to this content, but we want you to list it in your search engine, so it's in our sitemap. Well, that's a confusing signal point. You're saying, and ultimately by doing that, you're saying these pages are really not as important as we want you to think they are, because they're only in sitemaps. They're not accessible by navigation. Well, to a certain degree, the same reverse is true. If you can get to them through navigation, and you have sitemaps, but you don't list them in your sitemap, it's a similar message. So one very simple technique is be consistent with your site navigation and your sitemap files. Have site navigation to get to the content and list them in your sitemaps. All right, so internal links, again, can impact page authority, right? But they can also confuse topical focus trust. So Google Search Console can show you which pages are linked to the most on your site as their system understands it. If you have a lot of links pointing to really low value pages, and there's more links pointing to those than your most important pages, what message is that sending to the search engines? It's confusing your needs, and you need to look at that and find a way to fix that. Okay? But you want to be careful. You don't want to try to artificially manipulate those signals. What is artificial manipulation? It's page sculpting. Oh, we've got 8,000 links on our site, and we're going to put a no follow on 3,000 of them because we want to give more weight and value to the other links. Well, if you take enough time to try to do that, more often than not, you're going to run into problems because it's not natural. You're not doing it naturally, right? If you want a page on your site to be considered more valuable, just put more links on it. Don't try to artificially eliminate other links that really exist. right? There's a simple way to go about it. You don't need to get fancy with algorithm, with formulas about the number of links that you have that are follow and how many are no follow and how many links are counted on an individual page. Don't spend energy on that. You don't need to. And you will run into problems more often than not because it's artificial. All right. I don't want to spend too much more time here because I want to leave it open for questions. So I'm just going to run through a couple of more slides here. Again, this whole deck will be available afterwards. But the next concept for topical focus is the URL funnels. All right. Oh, we need to have a flat architecture because the closer to the root level of the site, the more important the page is. That's not true under certain circumstances. And if you try to artificially manipulate that, you're going to cause problems and it's going to dilute the real topical focus that you need, right? So flat architecture. Everything's one click away from the home page or one folder short off of the home page. Well, that's implying that some, 50-word blog post that really doesn't belong in the index anyway, or your FAQ page is as important as your main category pages or your main services pages, right? Or the history of our company, which is really not an important page overall. If that's at the same level hierarchically as your main category pages, that sends a confused message about which pages are important. And it's not truthful, so it's going to hurt you in the long run. You need hierarchical funnels in your URL structure, right? Nested categories, but where you have your products at the root level, that's taking the products outside of the category in the URL, and that weakens the category, right? The category is most strong when the posts or the products beneath it are actually beneath it in the URL, as well as from a human navigation experience perspective. So consistency of URL funnels reinforces the highest priority and the most important content properly. If you have too many copies of products, that dilutes the signal strength about individual categories. So it's another consideration. If you have infinite nesting, at a certain point, it just becomes too diluted and it's too deep. So you also need to avoid that. So you want to avoid flat architecture. You want to use consistency of nesting. You want to only use duplication in general ways, right? And use your brain, use your intuitive thinking, understand it logically. Use data to make decisions about how to organize content. Data is invaluable. So in conclusion, you want to apply the QUART test in all things. Page speed testing needs multiple tools. Improvements require looking at all areas. Topical focus means you need to be consistent. Topical focus requires dilution avoidance. And that's it. You can get my deck up on the web at bit.ly/SEO-jump, and I will make this available on Twitter after this as well. So there you go. I hope you all got value out of that.
Yeah, I was very, very technical and interesting. Okay, guys, who want to start? Amir, you have questions?
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. First, thanks, Alan, for your presentation. It was really detailed and it was great. Actually, you just confirmed a lot of things that I knew about, so I'm happy about it. And I loved your concept. So it's really something that I'm gonna print and have on my wall. So I just have a few questions. The first one about the site speed. A lot of websites use WordPress nowadays, and we use plugins. So did you find out in your audits that plugins actually slow down the website, and how can we resolve this problem like just an answer in a few words will be okay. Thank you very much, Alan.
Absolutely, I appreciate that question. Yeah, I do a lot of audits on WordPress sites, and I can tell you right now that even before we get to the notion of plugins, it's the factor of templates.
Oh, okay.
And even the default template, the 2015 template that comes with WordPress by default, has its own speed problems because it calls fonts from gstatic, which is a Google server property.
Okay.
And amazingly enough, gstatic fonts are frequently one of the worst problems for page speed delays across all of the audits that I do. So even the raw template that you get by default, there's already problems that happen sometimes intermittently because you have millions of people now using these fonts and these gstatic servers. I don't know if you use Google Analytics a lot, but
yes, I do.
more often than not, when I go to Google Analytics, it's delayed because of gstatic, even Google's own Google Analytics environment, right? So be aware of that. But yes, plugins offer great value sometimes, but quite often there's speed problems because the plugins are poorly designed or because the plugin requires calls to a third-party server. Okay? And if it calls to a third-party server, now you have first byte time issues not just on your own server, but that third-party server. Or you have hops in between your server and that server, or there's a really large set of scripts. I've seen scripts that are over 1 megabyte just for one script from some of these plugins. They're insane. So Web Page Test Details Report will show you where the problems are when you test enough, and then you need to be able to have the skills or the developer resources to associate this script or this style sheet or this functionality with a particular widget or plugin. That's how you can resolve those issues. Sometimes you can replace those with better, more efficient plugins. Sometimes you can take the scripts that the plugin calls and move them to your own server. There's ways around this some of the time. And sometimes you just need to kill the plugin.
Yeah, okay.
So there you go.
Thank you, Alan. I have other questions, but I can leave the other guys to ask you the question in the meantime.
Okay, and just so you're aware, anybody who doesn't get the ability to ask a question right now, you can contact me on Twitter, and I'd be happy to answer questions based on my availability throughout today.
Thank you.
There is another question from audience, not from guys who's inside. Alan, you can see it on hyper comments, or I paste it in a chat here inside. It's about mobile AMP, accelerated mobile pages. Can you see it?
Yes, I see this. Okay, so AMP is another step that Google is taking to control the web. Now, I'm not saying that Google is evil. I'm just saying that Google, like most capitalist-driven businesses, wants to do all they can to have as much control over the web as possible. Now, the truth is, page speed has been a severe problem for too long. Almost every audit I do, page speed is a critical problem. So I understand this. And they want to be able to help. But they've come up with a way to do it that's in their ecosystem's methodology. Unlike schema.org, schema.org was a collaborative effort between Google, Yahoo, and Bing. All three of them got together because they were tired of waiting for standards bodies to come up with structured markup standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they needed additional help to be able to figure out what was happening, so they came out with schema. With AMP, it's their desire to speed up the mobile web, but it's in a very controlled, boxed environment. And when they initially came out, I was really upset because it wouldn't initially allow third-party ad servers. Well, they got wind of that, and enough publishers and ad providers complained that they've already changed that, right? And AMP hasn't even launched yet. I don't like the fact that AMP is controlled entirely by Google as this internal ecosystem they're inventing. And I'm very wary about whether or not it's going to be something that enough sites are going to adapt. And because of that, I don't recommend that anybody get on the AMP bandwagon right away. Wait for it. The amount of time and resources it's going to take to roll out a completely new technical platform or framework that Google has invented, just like the hashbang path, right, with Ajax. Well, they've just now deprecated that whole mess, right? So it's like, yeah, they may be good in it. I don't necessarily know, and I don't believe that there's going to be enough adoption worldwide for them to be able to justify making it a ranking factor. That's my opinion at this moment.
Okay, Umar, do you have a question? Hello, Nitin?
Yes, I have a question, Alan.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. So, Alan, my question is, suppose if a site is on Oracle or Apex on some complex server due to the complexity of the business, how is it possible to improve the site speed when we cannot improve due to technology limitation?
So let me make sure I heard that properly, because I didn't hear it 100%, okay? What I heard was, how can we improve speed if we can't get access to our control technology? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You may not be able to. The best that we can do sometimes is to run the test, because we can run tests even if we don't have access to the back end. And if enough test data can be shown that there are problems with speed, it's our responsibility, if we have the opportunity, to convey the message of how important this is. And then do our best to get the decision makers to understand that this is a financial problem for the business. While we are not able to precisely measure the actual cost financially, there are several studies that are out there on page speed improvements having a financial benefit for different kinds of websites, right? And people like Ian Laurie at Portent, P-O-R-T-E-N-T, Internet, and others have written articles about the notion that a certain improvement in page speed is directly correlatable to increased profits for certain sites. So we can sometimes bring that into the mix as well. And we can talk about where Matt Cutts himself had stated at a conference that if speed is bad enough, your SEO will be hurt. So it's our job to educate. And
I think you have a question from Dean Kudus. He's not using the microphone, but he typed it. So for sake of audience, if you can read it and answer it, it's in the chat. Yeah.
yes, I'm reading it now, and I know Dean, so I appreciate the question. Okay. Not all CMSs are created equally, and developers find new and creative ways to present another indexing obstacle. What is one nugget of advice over the years you would suggest as the seed to uncovering issues? I can't emphasize it enough. WebPageTest.org's details report. To this point in my experience, it is the most powerful resource at identifying specific individual issues at the source level when enough testing is done, and when you can be fortunate enough that your test is timed to catch intermittent problems, because sometimes these problems are intermittent because of servers that files reside on. But where you can also see the total file sizes and the cumulative number of files. Web page test counts the number of DOM objects. Google Analytics also goes into the DOM object process as part of the speed evaluation. So that's Google Analytics, again, is another resource. Those are the two that I rely on most consistently and have gotten the most trust value from. Because when I do my audits, when I do 60 or 80 audits a year, I see everything, and I see new stuff all the time at the code level. But consistently, I find answers with those two resources. So there's Dean's question.
I have a question.
Okay, yeah. Nitin, if you have a question, you just after Amal, okay?
All right, cool. Right, so my question is about HTTPS. So here's the thing. Since you've done countless of audits, and now that HTTPS is part of the ranking factors, what would you say is right now, from your own experience and all the audits you made, what's more important for a website to do if they had between the choice between going HTTPS or improving their speed? Which one of them will make more sense and, you know what I mean, brings more, I don't know, revenue or more profit for the business?
Another great question.
Thank you.
So just this week, I think it was yesterday, because what day is today? I don't even know. Maybe it was this weekend or it was Friday. Google came out and announced that they're going to give priority to HTTPS for indexing. Generally speaking, what that's about is if you have two versions of your site, one is HTTP and one is HTTPS, they're going to give ranking, my brain just froze up. They're going to give the HTTPS version higher priority to get ranked. Okay? Well, in that scenario, that's a problem all by itself because you should always only have one version. Either you have HTTP or HTTPS, and if you use one, you should have the other redirect to that one you want. So the notion that they're going to give more priority to HTTPS is bogus. It's an artificial social engineering attempt to get more sites to use HTTPS. So be aware of that. That's a trick. It's a deception point. It's artificial manipulation. It's not based on the notion that, oh my God, we have to go to HTTPS to rank now. Don't fall for that trap. As far as HTTPS ranking value, HTTPS will only count as a ranking signal if your site and another site are equal in every other way for SEO. And I'm talking across the board, all the major factors. Okay. If the HTTPS site is equal for all other reasons to the HTTP site, and that's a competitor of yours, they will give ranking preference to the competitor that is using HTTPS. Every time I've done an audit, I have found so many critical problems that are so much more important and so much more valuable when they're fixed that HTTPS is a waste of time. So no matter how much they cry or scream that you need to care about privacy, they're not doing this for privacy reasons. Okay? An informational website that's a generic informational website that is not something anybody should be ashamed about ever visiting does not need to be an HTTPS status. Now, at some point in the future, that may change. I do not believe they can force the entire internet to change. So I say, at this point, unless you have a need for other reasons to go to HTTPS, don't waste your time and energy because I've seen people make more problems by going there than they fix.
Okay. Thank you very much for the answer.
You're welcome.
Nitin, do you have a question? You were very quiet so far.
No, I don't have any question right now. So Alan is anyways approachable, so I generally interrupt him like every now and then asking so many questions. So right now I don't have any question. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I guess Alan is available. You know, he's his email or his Twitter. I'm just checking if we do have more question on the comment side so far. No. Okay. Somebody wanted to join us, but for some reason he's, I don't know, shy or something like that. Okay, guys, do we have more question to Alan? If we don't, do we? Yeah. Okay. Dean have a question. Was it a question? No, brand new status code here. Okay. Do we have more questions? 1, 2, 3. No questions. Okay. Any questions you might have later on, you can contact Alan directly. He's very contactable. I can assure you. Okay, Alan, thank you very much.
Dean has a question.
Okay, go on.
Somebody else just said they had a question?
Umar?
No, no sound. Okay, so I'll be available on Twitter at Alan Bleiweiss. And if you can't figure out how to spell my name, just do a search in Google for SEO audits, and you'll see me listed in the first page, and you can get to my site that way if you need to. But I'll just put this up really quick one last time so that you can all see this. Hang on. And I will make this available here. So you see, you can get the slide deck and at Alan Bleiweiss. Okay? Thank you all very much for participating.
You do still have a question on the comment site, if you can check it out.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay, where is it?
Or you want me to, I'll just paste it into chat.
Yeah. I do want to thank everybody who participated today and those of you who just watched. And even if you only watched but you didn't participate in the Hangout itself, don't hesitate to ask any questions you have. I'm happy to answer what I can within reason.
Okay, so Ramadash asking, it's not my question, but I just pasted it in chat.
Okay, I have a website where I have put canonical tag. After I put this, I got rank dropped. Is there any disadvantage for that tag? Well, I would need more information. Okay, unfortunately, canonical tags can be very helpful. However, if they're not implemented properly, or if other signals send a different message, canonical tags can be ignored. And the other problem, though, is what else is going on that might be a problem where the canonical tag change wasn't the cause. So if Google did an update, or if your site was already on the verge of weakness before that change, that might have been a trigger point. And it might not be the only problem. It might just have triggered an action algorithmically because the site might have already been weak. It's not very easy to just be able to answer this kind of question straight out. There's many different considerations and factors. But just generally consider this. A canonical tag is designed to be able to say the URL in this tag is the page we want you to index after you come to this page where this tag is on. So if the canonical tag is pointing to the page itself, if it's a self-pointing canonical tag, that shouldn't be a problem if you want those pages indexed. But if you have a meta robots no index and the canonical tag points to itself, the canonical tag says index this page and the meta robot says don't index this page. Well, that's a mixed signal. If you have a canonical tag that says don't index this page, but your sitemap file points to the page that your canonical tag says don't index, that's a confusing signal. So the first thing I do is I look at all the signals to make sure they're all consistent. The robots.txt file, the xrobots tag and the header of the page, the meta robots, canonical tags. links, or any links pointing to those pages, do they have no follows on them? All of these need to be looked at, right? When you're evaluating or attempting to think about, are my canonical tags causing a problem? That's the first thing that I would do. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Sorry?
I have a follow-up question about your answer, Alan. I'm so sorry, Anton.
Yeah.
So, Alan, from your answer that you just gave, I heard something interesting. So, about canonical tag, would you say that if we want to, in a way, if you want to tell the bots that this page, we want this page to be indexed, so would you say that it would be a good SEO practice to add the self-canonical tag on each page of our site? Or because my understanding was to use canonical tag when we have kind of a duplicated page, and then we want to, or maybe when we have a multilingual website and you want to tell the search engines which one is the kind of the original and which one we want to index. But from your answer right now, you're actually giving me like another way to use it. So I'm asking you, is it a good practice to add the canonical tag for each of your pages to tell the search engines that that's the page that we want to rank?
Oh, you have such great questions.
Thank you.
So I talked in this presentation about consistency of signals.
Exactly.
And canonical tags, in theory, were originally created. They were originally created to help reduce duplicate content, indexation, and conflicts. But let's talk about the history of Google. The robots.txt file used to be an absolute directive. Don't index this content. Don't go over here. Don't go anywhere near this. Well, Google doesn't always obey the robots file anymore. Canonical tags are themselves based on the premise of the word canonical. It means authoritative, right? What is the authoritative message with this tag? It's this link over here, this URL is what we want you to do. We want you to index this one over here. But Google doesn't always follow that either. So anything that exists that might have, in its original intent, been meant to be absolutely authoritative is now only a hint.
Okay.
That's how complex Google's own environment is. And that environment abuses the English language definition of canonical and the original purpose of the robots.txt file. Yes?
Okay.
So because of that, we need to step back and think about the bigger picture. Consistency of signals is critical.
Okay.
There is nothing wrong with using self-canonical tags on every page of your site, if you want every page indexed. If you want a page indexed, there's nothing wrong with having a canonical tag in the header that lists that URL.
Great.
At the same time, let me go even further. If you don't want a page indexed, don't even use canonical tags to point to another page. Block that page from indexing entirely. Don't even allow the search engine to use it. Block it in robots.txt, put a meta robots no index, no follow, and do not include open graph tags or Twitter cards in the header either.
Okay.
Because the open graph tags and the Twitter cards say index this page.
Great.
So eliminate all of those. That's my advice. Now you can use canonical you can use canonical tags to reduce duplication. Just be aware, if you don't want a page indexed, you need to decide, do you want this page for your visitors or not?
Exactly.
Because if you really don't want this for your visitors, then that page shouldn't exist and you should 410 it or 301 it, right?
Great.
If you want it available for your users and not indexed in search engines, You can use canonical tags to point elsewhere and hope that it will work. But if you don't evaluate your data in an ongoing basis, you might not realize that they're ignoring your canonical tags.
Okay. Thank you very much, John, for your answer.
Thank you very much.
Priceless.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who was with us tonight, or it's the morning in the other side of the pond. Thank you, everybody who were with us. We will have this year just only one more webinar on 29th. On 29th, check our website. Thank Alan. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, and we are off.